Namaste friends, Holly Yogi here. Today I've got a 20-minute practice for you, and in this practice we're going to be targeting a muscle that you don't hear about a lot, but it is super important when it comes to the health of our spine, as well as keeping our pelvis balanced and even keeping the rib cage balanced. It's a really deep muscle, so if you want to visualize it for a moment with me, that can be really helpful when it comes to trying to connect with this muscle because it's super deep. And our deeper muscles are what I like to call our more mindful muscles, and we have to be a little bit more intentional when we connect with them. So it's a bilateral muscle, meaning we have two of them, and they live on either side of your spine. They're like these pillars of support that connect from the top of your hip to your low ribs. And it's so deep as I'm like kind of palpating here. I'm in the lats and that thoracolumbar fascia. We're not really quite getting to the QL. You can get to it if you work a little bit more, but it's a pretty deep muscle and it's a big muscle. And so if you think about it, it lives at the top of, connects at the top of the hip to the low ribs. So what it does is it's a hip hiker. It'll pull one side of your hip up. And what can tend to happen if one side gets really short and tight and bound up, it's going to keep that one side of your pelvis kind of always pulled up. Your pelvis can go out of balance a lot of different ways, but this one is really common. And what can happen when one side's short and tight and then the other side's a little overstretched and maybe weaker, that side that's short and tight is where you'll start to maybe get some issues going on with even possibly the spinal discs, maybe some compression on the nerves, that you might start to feel some pain radiating down through the back of the hip, even the side of the leg. Sometimes this is the culprit when it comes to sciatica. That's true sciatica that's coming from the lumbar spine. So creating space here is going to take some of that pressure off of the sciatic nerve that comes out of the lumbar spine. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to focus on kind of releasing this area, creating space, and then just moving it in a really functional way. So we can always tend to this muscle throughout our day, throughout our life, by laterally flexing the spine, which is something that just as human beings we don't tend to do. This is kind of the way fish moves. Fish move a lot in the ocean. They do a lot of that lateral flexion. We tend to kind of move forward and backwards. So we're going to focus on that today, but be really gentle with yourself, and hopefully your low back and your hips will thank you. So to get started, just begin with a blanket for your head, and we'll come down to your back. And as you come to your back, we're going to start with your knees bent, just giving the low back a lot of support. You might even bring the hands to the hips, rest the palms across the hips, and just notice if there's any asymmetries here. Say hi, Daisy. And we'll go ahead and open the arms out wide to T. Step your feet out a little bit wider than your hips. And just take a moment to breathe slow and breathe deep. And then you can begin to gently rock your knees side to side. So we could do this in kind of a not so mindful way where we're just kind of flopping the legs side to side, going through the motions. But if we want to start to tap into some of those deeper muscles or more mindful muscles, if you go really slow and you think of supporting all of your movements from your center, we can start to tap into the deep core, which this muscle we've been talking about called your quadratus lumborum, a lot of anatomists consider a part of the deep core. And working with clients one-on-one that have been having maybe back pain for long periods of time, a lot of times this muscle can go a little quiet, can be harder to connect to, so give the body some time. We'll pause for a moment the next time your knees drift to the left. And again, we're not letting them just flop down. We're keeping some tone through the core to support the weight of the legs. And just extra mindful this time here. You're going to inhale, breathe deep. And as you exhale, I want you to think of using the deep core, kind of pulling the belly down to the spine to slowly draw the knees up. And that should take any strain or pain out of the low back. That's when we tend to get strain and pain in the low back, is when we move without that mindfulness. So taking the knees to the right. Again, we're not letting them flop down. We're staying really strong through the deep core. Find a deep breath in. As you exhale, pull the belly in, like you're kind of pressing the low back towards the mat. Let's just do a couple more with that extra bit of mindfulness. I like to flex the feet and spread the toes as we go here, side to side. It'll keep some muscle energy moving through the legs. The legs connect up fascially through the deep core. Good. So the next time that your knees are drifting to the left, go ahead and pick up your right knee and stack it on top. And we're going to come and shift around a little bit here. You're going to balance all the way on your left side with your knees stacked one on top of the other. So your bottom arm can just extend out. I always like to kind of wiggle that shoulder blade around a little bit to where it feels just comfortable to rest on the side. And then from here, bring your top hand up to that top hip. So we can be really mindful as you slowly pick your top leg up. Bottom leg, as you can see, mine's at like a nice 90-degree angle, so I can ground through that whole lateral line of the leg. You're going to extend your top leg all the way out. Now when you get here, start to flex your foot and spread your toes. And just hold the leg in space here for a moment. Bringing that hand to the top hip. Notice if you're rolling back at all in your hips. This is where I tend to see a lot of people go. You could also be still maybe slightly forward. But the more that you can balance your hips, the more you're going to be forced to use your core here. So I want you to think of sending your tailbone straight down towards your heels and then finding an upward lift through that deep core. Now start to point your toes really strong, like you're reaching to touch something with them. Deep breath in. And as you exhale, slowly reach your toes towards the floor. As you do, let your top hip draw down. So remember, this is where this QL muscle attaches to. If yours is really short and tight, your toe might not even want to touch the floor. And that's totally fine. So I just want you to let that hip draw down to create some space. Toe reaches towards the floor wherever feels good for you. And then we're just going to make this a little movement flow. So then you'll lift your leg back up a little bit higher than the top of your hip, which is going to contract and strengthen this side. You'll point your toes, let your hip kind of draw away, reach your toes down. Just kind of keep going here. You can go at your own pace. You can exhale as you engage here. So you'll exhale to lift the leg. And then you'll inhale to stretch. And so again, we're inviting length and strength into our whole side body here. So working with the QL, but also the lateral leg. They're fascially connected. So opening and strengthening the outside of the leg here is going to do some good for the low back and the hips as well. And then the next time that toe reaches down towards the floor, if it doesn't quite want to reach there, what you might do is have a block handy, even a pillow, a blanket, something like that. And you could rest that foot down so that it gets to kind of relax here for a few deep breaths. So once you get here, we're going to add a little bit of movement just to release, again, any of that fascial tension through the connective tissue. So if your hand's on your hip, you can really feel you'd let your top hip roll forward and then roll back a little bit. So we're kind of getting into all those little nooks and crannies. And as you're doing this, the idea is for it to actually feel really good. So if there's kind of a different range of motion or a different movement that feels better in your body, go for it. Or maybe just being still feels really good, and that's totally fine too. Good. Pause for a moment and take your top arm up into the air. And just kind of move the shoulder around. And then on your next deep breath in, you're going to reach your top arm all the way overhead. So again, now we're gonna start to lengthen at the attachment towards those low ribs. Arm does not need to reach the floor. It's actually even better here at first just to kind of reach back, breathe space into the lumbar spine. Imagine there, if there was any compression or tension around nerves, you're just kind of breathing in, creating space. Go ahead and lift that arm back up, and then we'll move the arm. Actually, let's go ahead, lift the arm back up. We'll offload the leg, so we'll just do one piece at a time here. So you can rest that top leg down, let the hip relax. And now we'll just move that arm overhead as you inhale, breathe space. And then exhale, I like to press that palm kind of away as we come up. So again, that's that contraction. Inhale, reach overhead. Exhale, press the arm up. One more time, inhale, reach overhead. Exhale, press the arm up. Good. From here, extend your bottom arm and then turn your gaze up towards the ceiling. Start to let your ribs drop back a little bit, let your hip drop back, and you're gonna move really slowly into a gentle twist. So you're not gonna go all the way to the floor or anything like that. You're just gonna open the arm to a place that feels good. If you did start to feel any compression or discomfort, you're gonna stay before that. So even if it's just a little baby twist, that's totally fine because we're gonna move here, which is always good. So as you exhale, we'll come all the way back to your side and rest. As you inhale, we'll wave the arm up, kind of stretch that breath long, open, just to a range of motion that feels good. As you exhale, you're gonna hug the belly in and think of using the core to be what pulls you out of your twist. So you're not just moving from the periphery or your arm, you're moving from the inside out. And the arm just kind of follows that movement. A couple more like that. And you might notice the more time that you give this, maybe moving into your twist just starts to feel more open, more easeful. And so if going deeper feels good, that's totally fine. Good, and then one more time here, let's just slowly, like you're drawing a rainbow or a big arc overhead, sweep your arm overhead, breathe into your side, and then let that just circle around and carry you back onto your back where we started. So we'll take a moment here at center, shift around a little bit, and bring your hands back to your hips. Let's just pause and find a couple of slow, deep breaths in and slow breaths out. Good, so I'm just gonna switch around here so you can still see me, but all you're gonna do is roll over to the other side. So I'm gonna turn a little bit so that you can still see, and so you're just gonna come back to your side just how we did on the other one, starting with the knees stacked one on top of the other, and just kind of getting everything in line. Make sure that the spine's not curled forward like you would be when you're sleeping, and that you've got enough support here for your head so the neck feels like it's able to really relax while you're here. Go ahead and slide your hand to your top hip. Pick up that top leg. Again, bottom leg, the knee comes right out of the hip, and there's kind of a sense of grounding through that hip to help you balance. And with your hand on your hip, you might notice if you're rolling back a little bit or if you're still forward, and ignite through the deep core, press down through that bottom hip so that you can stay really balanced and supported here. Just take a couple deep breaths here, starting to awaken this QL muscle through the low back, awaken this whole lateral line of the leg. And then we'll point the toes. And as you kind of reach your toes down, you're letting your hip draw away from those ribs a little bit. So we get that gentle stretch. And then as you exhale, you're gonna flex your foot, slide the hip back up, and then we're going into like a gentle contraction, a gentle shortening of this left QL. Point your toes, inhale, reach the toes down. Breathe space. Exhale, flex your foot, lift up. Again, if your toes don't touch the floor, that's totally fine. It's just kind of a sign that we're working with an area where you do have some restrictions. So this will be good medicine for you, but less is more, especially if you have been having any discomfort or pain going on in the low back or the hips. A few more rounds like this. The next time that your leg is reaching down towards the floor, you can leave it resting here. Again, just like before, and one side can be really different from the other. If you rest that down and it feels really intense, especially if it's intense in like one spot, always what we're looking for in the body is like a big, broad brushstroke of a stretch, what I call like a holistic stretch. So if you did feel like it was intense, then just lift the foot, let it be supported a little bit here as it rests, because we're gonna add the arm on. And so you're gonna take that top arm all the way up, maybe move the shoulder around. And then on a breath in, inhale, reach your arms overhead. I'll try not to stick my hand in the fire. Reach your arm overhead and breathe space. So again, now we're lengthening towards the top of that muscle where it connects to the low ribs, and then exhale, lift up. Go ahead and bring the hand down. Before we do that, work just for the shoulder. Roll your top hip forward and back a little bit. Again, kind of flossing the tissues here along that whole lateral line of the leg. Go ahead and pick your leg up, stack one knee on top of the other, and then we'll just work with the arm. So stacking your knees. On your next deep breath in, inhale and reach that arm overhead. Breathe space. Exhale, gently contract. I like to press my palm away and even imagine like I'm pushing into something, like I had something to resist into. So inhale, we lengthen. Exhale, gently contract, like you're pulling those ribs all the way back down and together. Good, one more time. Exhale, press up, daisy hush. And then go ahead, come here. And then we'll slowly, as you come back to center, let the body twist open just to a place that feels good. This is kind of our little check-in. The most gentle spinal twist. Everything still feels good, feels spacious. And now exhale, use your core to draw you out really slow. Roll all the way back to your side. Inhale, wave your top arm up. Slowly twisting open. If it feels okay with the head, let your gaze follow your arm. Again, you're moving first from the inside, from deep within the core, those muscles that hug and support the spine, and your arms just following this rotation. And you want to feel like you are moving that whole rib cage. This is where we tend to get pretty bound up. So if you just were to move in like this and keep the ribs and the chest fixed, you're going to take a lot of load into the shoulder, into those rotator cuff muscles. So if you can, let the whole rib cage twist with you. Now, if it is a little bound up, then that's where you just go until you meet some resistance and then move right back out of it. Again, when we find those areas of restriction, limited mobility, it doesn't mean that we need to stretch super deep. It just means we need to continue to invite more movement into this area, and this is a great way to do that. Good. Go ahead and come back to your side. And for this last round, we'll just draw a big kind of rainbow overhead, a big arc, circle around, and let that carry you onto your back again. So I'm going to switch back to the my side here. Come to your back And if it's comfortable, get rid of any cushion under the head. You could just have like a small blanket, because we're gonna bring a little bit of balance here. We've worked with each side of the QL, but we're gonna bring a little bit of balance here with some bridge pose and some pelvic rocks. So come to center, knees are bent, hands on your hips. As you inhale, you're gonna roll the frontal hip points forward. So you can see I've got a big arc in my low back here. And you're just rolling forward to a place that feels good. If you are having any low back issues, you might feel some discomfort if you push too far. So just go to a place that feels good. And then exhale, go back the other direction. Now you could feel some discomfort here. It depends totally on what's going on with your low back. So just like with the other way, you're just rocking back and forth through a pain-free range of motion. Again, you'll inhale to come forward. You'll kind of let that belly fill with air. I like to think of letting my feet get light here, like I would lift them. And then as we exhale and rock back, I press into the feet. There's a big connection with the feet and the deep core. So press into the feet. You should feel the low back kind of stretch. This part usually feels really good. Inhale, roll forward, let the ribs lift. Let the belly stretch. As you exhale, pull those low ribs down and rock back. Just a few more here. And you might take a moment just to kind of feel where you're shifting your weight. Move your awareness down to the base of your spine. There's a bone there called your sacrum. If you're not familiar with it, it's in the shape of a triangle. And that's what you're kind of rocking back and forth across. So this is great for SI joint kind of issues or compression. Just keeping that sacrum really mobile and free. So now the next time that you rock back, you're going to keep the low back long and those low ribs kind of drawing down. Just open your arms out wide to T. Feel your feet on your mat, really press them down. Maybe lift and wiggle the toes for a moment, just wake up those feet. And then press into your feet and roll up just to a baby little bridge pose. I call this hammock pose. And so when you get here, I want you to fidget with your feet a little bit and move them around until you feel super grounded and connected through all four corners of your feet. You're not rolling out or more weight on one side or the other. You're super grounded, but you also feel spacious in your knee joint. So sometimes opening the toes a little bit or opening the knees might make you feel like you've got some more space there. And now think of lengthening through the low back down to the back of the legs, kind of scooping everything under like a hammock shape, and then hollow through the belly. Arms are out to T here, so the back line of the legs are working strong, and the belly's drawing in and up. A few more deep breaths. Reach your arms for the ceiling for a moment. Just take a pause here. This is great for lymphatic flow. You could roll the wrists around a little bit. And now as you roll down, you're going to keep this sense of your arms reaching up as you roll down your spine, set your hips down, open the arms back out wide to T, and we'll do that again. So you can let the hips rock forward, inhale, exhale, rock back, press into your feet, and we'll lift a little bit higher this time. Still not like pushing into your biggest bridge pose, going to a place that feels really sustainable. Check in with your foundation, with your feet, check in with your knees. Take a couple of deep breaths here and let your head start to get really heavy. Let your eyes get heavy. And let the back of your heart kind of settle and ground into the floor. Float your arms up again. Exhale, keep reaching up as you roll down your spine. As you roll down, relax your arms down, open them out wide to T. One more round here. You're going to press into your feet. Roll up. Maybe you roll up just a little bit higher, but you're still not like thrusting your hips up and pushing too strong into those hip flexors. I really want you to feel like you're contracting the back line of your legs on those low glutes, and that you're still grounded and connected through the feet and spacious through your knees. Go ahead, just when you feel ready here,
Float your arms up. And exhale, keep reaching up, maybe extra slow this time. You roll down one vertebra at a time, mobilizing the spine. And then as you roll down this time, you're going to stretch your legs out long to the end of your mat. You might reach back and grab your pillow or your blanket that you had under your head for support. And then just reach the spine long. And then coming back to this idea of your hip hiker muscle, we're just going to integrate it one more time with a little bit of movement. So all I want you to do is slide your left hip up. As you can see, my hip that's closer to you is sliding up, so I'm using my QL to shorten. I'm hiking that hip up. And then at the same time, I'm going to press my right heel forward. So we're kind of shortening left side body and then lengthening the right. Deep breath in. Slow breath out, slide back to neutral. Do that on the other side. Slide your right hip up, press your left heel forward. If you have been having any of those sciatic issues or any discomfort or pain prior to this video, then, you know, as you're going up and down, side to side, try to stay away from any of that. Everything should feel pretty good and open at this point, but sometimes when something feels good, we go, oh, I could go a little bit further, and then we might flare things up. So just be really slow and gentle. And when that feels good, slide your arms out to a T position. We'll just take a few deep breaths here, resting, integrating all the work you've done today. Again, you might bring your awareness to the core of the body, even with the eyes closed. Visualize your